Seek a Pull is a 10-week deadlift only program. What the program consists of is twice a week you will be deadlifting and doing accessory work. It all peaks at week 10 and hopefully you're going to hit an absolutely massive PB following it. There's a lot of quad work and anterior work. There's a lot of posterior chain work, as you might imagine, and it will improve the auxiliary side of your deadlift, such as grip strength, postural strength, and overall power.
Welcome back to Seek Strength. So recently on the Seek News show, which is every Monday, we had Jamal Browner's 500 kilo sumo deadlift, and we said this is the heaviest sumo deadlift in the world, and a lot of you let us know that it was not in fact the heaviest sumo deadlift in the world ever. It belongs to Krzysztof. Sounds like saying wrong.
I thought it was Krzysztof, but
No,
probably pronouncing it wrong.
Big aggressively told you wrong. So what that led us to do was compile all four of the heaviest 500 kilo plus deadlifts that have been ever done, which have been done in the last 3 or 4 years, and we'll do a little reaction to them.
Just at this point, Gareth,
Yeah.
I'd like to just make a note that
Go on.
it's very likely we've missed another one, right?
I don't think so.
And we're going to get, because I think, I'm not good at judging numbers, but it was at least 100,000 DMs we got. About
Listen, I can't
huge
count
steps.
real good,
Yeah.
but it was definitely beyond 4.
No, we got a lot of DMs.
Well, a lot of comments as well.
So if there are more 500 kilo deadlifts,
There's not. There's definitely not. I'm 100% sure of this. I've no doubt about it. I would have heard about it, except for we didn't hear about Krzysztof's.
Anyway,
So
a compilation.
We'll obviously start with order of completion. So we're going to talk about what we think is the most impressive, because obviously we're not going to just have all these deadlifts and then not compare them subjectively across parameters and just make wild sweeping claims without watching them and then saying these claims. First up, we've got the first 500 kilo deadlift done by Eddie Hall. It was done at the World Deadlift Championships at the Giants Live. He was planning doing this for a long time. It was done in competition in front of a crowd. Now I'll explain at the end whose I thought was who I think is objectively the most impressive. But first off, here's Eddie's.
Just in reality, this is a very nice deadlift.
Yeah, it's super nice. You saying that because it's not sumo? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, having watched this deadlift a lot of times, I think it's nice. One thing that does slightly scare me is how difficult it must be for him to bend over.
Yeah, well, he's super slim now, so you don't.
He is super slim now.
Well, slimmer. Quite a large human doing this.
Yeah, massive. Do you know what body weight he was?
Well, heavy.
200 kilos.
Massive, I would say.
Yeah.
No, I've no idea what body weight he actually was. So very clean deadlift, very tidy, nice technique. No hitching, just very heavy at the top, of course.
Yeah. No real pausing or stopping either, you know. Like, to be perfectly honest, that's a very, very nice deadlift.
So this is kind of similar. This was similar to breaking the first, not 5 minute mile.
Sub 4 minute mile.
4 minute mile. You know who
Sir
did that?
Roger Bannister.
Sir Roger Bannister. I knew it was Sir Roger Bannister. So this is just similar to this, and I think this is one of the things that lends this being incredibly impressive, is being the first person to do this, because we've seen 3 more people now do it since, and in the human physiology changed in the last 5 years compared to the couple of years before we saw this deadlift, and nobody did it, and now we have had 3 more people do it. 2 of those, well, one of those being under 105 kilos, so raw technically. So the big thing with this deadlift, and as we'll see in a minute, half Thor's deadlift, is that they're wearing deadlift suits.
Yeah.
So the thing with deadlift suits is a lot of strongmen will say they don't get anything out of deadlift suit, but they're still wearing them.
I think the major thing for strongmen and suits, like however many plies those suits are, the major thing for strongmen is they're using that for nearly all their events and nearly all their training, and a lot of their squats are done with suits as well. Like, it'll be incredibly difficult for a strongman to go and do something completely raw, you know. Like, I think that's whatever biomechanical advantage they get from the suit, there's almost no way they'd be able to do something like this, purely just because of the weight of training momentum they'd have built up with the suit. I think it'd be just difficult for them, whether that be psychologically or a combination of kind of like their proprioception and the psychological element of it. They'd just be so used to wearing deadlift suits, it's unlikely you'd see them breaking it without it.
Now, I hope everyone's seen the footage after this where Eddie nearly died. We'll move on then to Thor Bjornsson, who did 501 kilos who did 501 kilos in his home gym. It was judged by one of the strongmen whose name is escaping me, John Paul Sigmundson, I think. So he was judging it. This is Thor's power gym or whatever, so he did 501 kilo deadlifts. And then after this, if anyone remembers on the live stream, while this was happening, he brought up the contract for Thor and Eddie Hall's boxing match, which went on for a very long time and then turned into an absolute debacle. Thor came out and actually put on quite a good show in terms of boxing quality. So Thor, being an absolutely monstrous human, almost a mountain, you might say.
The mountain.
So did an incredibly easy 501 as well, figure of 8 straps and briefs also.
Just the distance he lifts his barbell is shocking.
Shocking.
Like, 500 kilos shouldn't have to move that far.
No. From what I remember, he did it a little bit easier than Eddie Hall's.
I think it was faster.
It's about a little bit faster, but nothing major. I know it's 1 kilo more, but I wonder what Eddie would have deadlifted if he kept going along that path, you know?
Yes.
I'd love to have seen if he kept training, what would he eventually deadlifted? Because he'd done 510, 515, 520. Like, at what point? He said he put everything into deadlifting 500 kilos. Like, he said he was doing, like, in terms of, like, psychology and stuff, he said the things he was doing to try and hype himself up for it, obviously including multiple different performance-enhancing drugs and different Class A stimulants.
I would say it's not so much a thing of like how far along the line, it's more so what he would have deadlifted before killing himself.
Yeah.
Like seeing the physiological impact it had on him just in the very short term as he was doing the deadlift. It's very, very likely when you're at that level, you're into an arena of consequence there where it's not like, oh, I'm going to tear a hamstring or I'll tear a bicep off the bone. You're into dying.
Yeah, deviated aortas and stuff like that. So after the footage, he said it was very scary when he was like on oxygen mask. He said like everything was closing in on him. The doctors were very concerned for him. So I don't know if you've seen any behind the scenes World's Strongest Man footage, but you'll see there's 1 or 2 years where Eddie was almost, or they were not going to let him. The World's Strongest Man has a doctor who assesses all the competitors before they compete for obvious reasons, for insurance and for health of the athletes, and you can't have someone dying on TV. But essentially they were saying that Eddie was kind of at a point where it's touch and go where they could let him compete. So they're obviously, in terms of health concerns, that obviously was a massive thing. I don't think you could ever see him going back to that. I don't think you could ever see him. It'd be very hard to get to that point, see how unhealthy he was, go to probably in the best shape of his kind of adult career for that boxing match in terms of cardiovascular health, and like generally he probably felt amazing compared to when he was deadlifting that. So I don't think he'll ever actually go back to that in terms of quantity of drugs and the sheer body weight. Now we have Krzysztof. It looks like Krzysztof, but that's not how you say it.
Okay.
So he did 502.5 kilos, no briefs, sumo deadlift, but he's under 105 kilo body weight.
Insane.
So
insane.
Very, very easy as well.
Yeah. Like, one thing I would like to do is, and you know, when you used to watch like the old Mythbusters videos and they'd have like the ruler out behind and they'd be measuring like the speed of a balloon as it comes flying out of a jet engine or something.
Yes.
I'd like to see the relative distance the barbell has moved.
Yeah.
Because that definitely does play into it as well, you know. Like in terms of how impressive it is. But that's an insanely fast deadlift, over 500 kilos.
So the funny thing is like there's a relative distance and then there's the absolute difference. So like what percentage of his body weight did that deadlift move? And if you had the sumo deadlift versus the conventional deadlift, what's the relative distance? And then what's the absolute distance among all of these deadlifts? Like how far are they moving? We don't ever look at the absolute distance, you know. Just some people have more favourable leverages. You can't start evening things out across that regard. So you can't be like, Thor deadlifted his 660 centimetres, but Krzysztof did his 150 centimetres, so it's not as impressive.
The other thing is so it's a heavier weight, but we know Thor has been 200 kilos in the past. World's Strongest Man. I know Stan Efferding talked about Thor being 200 kilos and then bringing his weight down and then going back up. Thor is conceivably twice his weight when he's lifting that.
Yeah, not far off. Almost twice his weight.
If he's going for the heaviest deadlift of his career, and that guy's under 100 kilos, it's conceivable that he could be more than twice his body weight.
No.
How mental is that?
It is mental when you think about it. Now we have the second sumo deadlift. So Jamal Browner did 500 kilos. Arguably...
This is 460, is it?
Sorry, this is 460. So this is his last warm-up, which is a mental jump. So I just included the 460 just to want to see what it looked like, which is an incredibly heavy deadlift for loads of world's strongest man competitors and super heavyweights.
Yeah.
So you can see with like Krzysztof's lockout, it's like just at his knee joint.
Yes.
But he's not standing ridiculously wide.
No.
So here's a 500 kilo deadlift.
The standing super wide just gives me that sweaty palm thing when they drop the bar down and pull their feet in at the same time.
It's I think it's the price you have to pay for sumo deadlifting super wide, and it's maybe it's the price you should pay. So the interesting thing about Jamal's deadlift is his back angles are quite similar to that if he was conventional deadlifting. So he's not super upright. If you looked at like Krzysztof's, it's like straight up and down. Whereas at Jamal's, he's quite inclined back angle and he's pulling from quite a high hip angle with the sumo deadlift. So in terms of like, if you had to ask me, like, what do you think is the most impressive of all these deadlifts? I'm going to have to go with Eddie Hall. Now, I'm not a major fan of Eddie Hall as a person. Sometimes doesn't come across great, especially in the lead up to the boxing match. But a couple of things in his favour. Look, I know it's technically the third tied for the lightest. So there's 501 and 502.5. But they're all 500 plus kilo deadlifts. So technically, right, you should be like, okay, Krzysztof's is the most impressive, but Eddie did his in competition, which none of the others did. Now I know Thor's was in competition, but it was by himself in his own gym with his own barbell, with his own people in his own country, with his own plates, everything there, you know.
Yeah,
all incredibly familiar. This was a do or die event where he really built up to this. Eddie did this in an event, first person to do this. It's argued that the others might have ever done that if he hadn't done 500 kilos. The only thing, and it's conventional as well as the third thing. The
conventional thing for me is probably the biggest.
Yes.
I think being first in like everyone knows who Neil Armstrong is, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers like how many track and field athletes from the last century
were on the moon. I know, exactly. None of them.
Do you remember, you know? But people remember Sir Roger Bannister because he did the sub 4 minute mile. Like it really is just a thing that you like. If you ain't first, you're last. And unless someone's going to go and do a 600 kilo deadlift, which I really don't see as in the next decade, in the next 2 decades, someone coming out of the woodwork and pulling 600 kilos. There's certainly nobody on the circuit at the moment who I think is going to pull 600. Certainly not conventional. We're in this generation of people, this is the kind of first for deadlift, for you to do something massive. And in that case, I think Eddie Hall is the more impressive one. He was the first person who went out and actually did it. If it was just purely my decision and I wanted to have one of those deadlifts, it would be Thor's. He's just big, massive, tall and strong, and he's a bit more aesthetic doing it as well.
I don't know. I thought Eddie's was Eddie's Hall's deadlift I thought was more aesthetic than Thor's.
Did you?
Thor so has that thing where a lot of the super big deadlifters and they're like get to nearly 200 kilos, they have to stand super wide, so they have to stand with that kind of hip width stance. Whereas you see Eddie's is a nice kind of straight angle that you look for.
Yeah, that is
for everyone else's.
I don't know. They're both very impressive. The two sumo deadlifts are incredibly impressive as well. Just the speed of Krzysztof's one is insane. Like the fact that, and it's not an incredibly whippy bar. Like it's not. That's just how a bar would bend with 500 kilos on it. You know.
Eddie certainly looked like he had the most potential for doing more in the short term.
If he hadn't
done it,
passed out afterwards.
No, Thor looked like he had the most potential for doing more. I thought that one.
He did attempt 505 at some point, didn't he?
No. So there's been a couple of people who've been knocking around. Someone will do 505 pretty soon, I bet, or 510.
Yeah.
The thing with 505 is like you're not going to do 500 in 505. You're probably going to go something like 480 to 505.
Yeah.
So I hope the heaviest is just a raw 505 conventional. I'd love for someone to kind of put the nail in it, because there's been a lot of talk recently about the sumo deadlift, and it's really coming to like a head in terms of social media aggression. A lot of people really don't like the sumo deadlift thing. A lot of people are really hating on it. If you look at a lot of comments, and we talked about it recently, where someone did point out that there's a lot of younger male lifters who have huge sumo deadlifts, but are benching like their sumo deadlifting like 320 or 700 pounds, or they're deadlifting 300 kilos, but then they're squatting like 180, and they're benching like 140, and it's like there's something awry here, and it's very hard to kind of put your finger on it, you know. But
to be honest, for me, it's not a problem that the sumo deadlift exists, or that people are going for 500 kilo plus sumo deadlifts.
Yeah.
The problem for me is that people hold it as the same thing.
Yeah.
That they say, oh, well, he's deadlifted more than him, or he's deadlifted over. Like, I think they're just two very distinct things, you know. It's kind of, it'd be the equivalent of high bar and low bar back squats, but nobody's setting world records with high bar back squats.
Yeah.
You know, like the ass to grass weightlifter style back squat. Nobody's doing that, you know, but the difference is probably more exaggerated with the sumo deadlift to the conventional deadlift. Definitely the biomechanical advantage is far greater in the deadlifting case than it would be in the squat case. But yeah, they're four very, very, very strong people.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll ever do anything about the sumo deadlift, especially in kind of the leaders of the pack in terms of federations, would be the IPF, or I can't imagine the untested federations will do anything about it. I can't imagine they'll need to, because they just want the biggest lifts, you know, whereas the IPF want to be the cleanest and sharpest. But who are you picking?
I'm picking half Thor.
Oh, of course you would. Thanks for watching.